सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। सुखमात्यन्तिकं यद्यत् बुद्धिग्राह्यमतीन्द्रियम् वेत्ति यत्र न चैवायं स्थितश्चलति तत्त्वतः यं लब्ध्वा चापरं लाभं मन्यते नाधिकं ततः यस्मिन् स्थितो न दुःखेन गुरुणापि विचाल्यते तं विद्या दुःखसंयोगः वियोगं योगसंज्ञितम् स निश्चयेन योक्तव्यः योगो निर्विण्णचेतसा संकल्पप्रभवान् कामान् त्यक्त्वा सर्वान् शेषतः मनः सैवेन्द्रियग्रामं विनियम्य समन्ततः शनैः शनैरुपरमेत् बुद्ध्या धृतिगृहीतया आत्मसंस्थं मनः कृत्वा न किञ्चिदपि चिन्तयेत् यतो यतो निश्चरति मनः चञ्चलमस्थिरम् ततस्ततो नियम्यैतत् आत्मन्येव वशं नयेत् प्रशान्तमनसं ह्येनं योगिनं सुखमुत्तमम् उपैति शान्तरजसं ब्रह्मभूतमकल्मषम् युञ्जन्नेवं सदात्मानं योगी विगतकल्मषः सुखेन ब्रह्म संस्पर्शम् आत्यन्तं सुखमश्नुते सर्वभूतस्थमात्मानं सर्वभूतानि चात्मनि ईक्षते योगयुक्तात्मा सर्वत्र समदर्शनः यो मां पश्यति सर्वत्र सर्वं च मयि पश्यति तस्याहं न प्रणश्यामि स च मे न प्रणश्यति। Hari Om, Namaskaram to everyone. Yam labdhva chaparam labham manyate nadhikam tatah yasmin sthito na dukkhena gurunapi vichalyate. The 22nd verse. He said, which having obtained refers to that spiritual evolution, that maturity. He thinks no other gain superior to it, wherein established he is not moved even by the great sorrow. He is not moved. Yasmin sthito na dukkhena na vichalyate. Is not moved. Now, the whole thing boils down to this concept of having emotions vis-a-vis becoming emotional, which is the concept of emotions vis-a-vis emotionalism. So emotionalism is nothing but where you are affected by your emotions. Now, whether it could be a positive emotion, it could be a negative emotion, irrespective of the nature of emotion, you have a capacity to feel it, a capacity to handle it, a capacity where you're not affected by it. So here is a knowledge, he says, which prepares you to face even the greatest of sorrow. You're not affected, you're not lost your mental equanimity. The moment you have lost your mental equanimity, that is equivalent to becoming emotional. Now, I said you could take a positive emotion or a negative emotion. You can feel a positive emotion of love, and yet you can also become emotional with that feeling of love, isn't it? You could feel a negative emotion of anger and yet not become emotional with anger. I hope you're getting what I'm saying. Emotions are positive and negative. You could have a positive emotion. I took the example of love. At the same time, you can become emotional about it. On the other side, I have a negative emotion of anger, and I'm not emotional about it. I'm just throwing a new possibility here. Just because you have a positive emotion, that doesn't mean anything. You can still become emotional. You can still see what is become emotional or emotionalism. Emotional or emotionalism is when you are affected by the emotions. So I could have a positive emotion. I could be overwhelmed with that, isn't it? I could have a negative emotion of anger and I don't get overwhelmed with that. I lose control over an emotion. That means you're emotional. But I could use my temper. I could raise my voice. I could try to correct someone. The next 2 minutes later, I have sound sleep. Nothing disturbs you. I'm telling you, it's very much possible. I got angry at someone, and the next 2 minutes later, I was sound asleep. The person didn't understand what was going on. Now, you all may be thinking, I had an argument with Vijaya. No, there is no chance of winning that battle. It is a lost battle. So there's no question of fighting or attempting. So you please don't imagine your thoughts to run wild here. Huh? So it's none of that. But you have a negative emotion. Just because you have anger or temper doesn't mean you can't use it for a specific purpose, an intended purpose. You want to alert someone, you want to correct someone, you want to pull up someone. You can use an emotion, but you used temper. You've not lost your temper. And the acid test is your mind is the next moment your mind is calm. It is as normal as possible. But it could be a positive emotion that overwhelms you. Now, can somebody explain what it is to become emotional with love? Let me bring Reddy Garu into the equation. After that, I'll ask Seturamanji.
Guruji.
Yes, sir.
Maybe I may not be able to answer you straight on the love emotion, but I can say that when there is a positive emotion and the mindfulness will bring in, like when we're talking about the triggering of a negative emotion coming there, you fire somebody, instantly you come back to the normalcy and carry out your activities. So that moment to moment, a few seconds back, you were absolutely in a different mood. Something went wrong and you were out of your, it appears to be an outside person that you're out of control, but you are absolutely in control in reins of your emotions. So it applies to the both for the positive as well as negative emotions. Let's not get overwhelmed with a good news which has come and where you roll down with so much of positive information has come into you, but take it in a right way. So that's where I practice over the mindfulness. So objectively looking at that issue, whether it is a negative or a positive, and try to direct that emotions accordingly. So not to lose the temper or not to overwhelm on the positive news. That's what I could able to understand.
Yes, you're right. You're right. Where you're objective. You're not allowing that emotion to affect you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, Seturamanji.
Hariom Guruji. With
yes, sir.
Respect to love, your question, love when it is excessively given, it becomes infatuation. Emotional, when love becomes emotional, it is infatuation rather than love.
No, why are you changing the very expression of emotion here?
No, you told love when it is given emotional example you wanted. I say when people love their children and when they become emotional about that love, it is no more love, it becomes infatuation.
Infatuation, can it be used with children? It's only between two lovers in that sense. It has a specific connotation, I think, isn't it?
Okay, if that is so, then it can be applied there also.
I appreciate how quickly you're adaptable to the different.
Madly in love with somebody.
That madness comes in. So that mad love becomes blind and mad. They say love is blind, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So you're not able to punctuate that love. So when you operate purely on that emotion without punctuation, without any rational element, you can develop an infatuation, you can develop an attachment. What else happens when you when you operate on pure emotion?
It leads to suffering. Attachment will lead to suffering.
Yes, that indeed suffering.
You're not able to bear if the person you love too much, you won't be able to bear anything reverse happens, untoward happens.
That's attachment, isn't it?
Yes.
If you see the pure emotion of love, when it is ungoverned, it becomes attachment.
Yes.
So even the pure emotion needs to be governed, controlled, and manifested accordingly. So a manifested emotion without the intellect becomes emotional. That's what we are saying, isn't it? Hmm? So you now you are able to differentiate. Doesn't matter whether be it good or bad, positive or negative. This happens to the extent you have the intellectual development, to the extent your intellect is strong, to that extent the emotions are under control. The moment the emotions inundate, overflow your intellectual barrier of containing the emotion, that is when you become emotional. That is when it starts affecting you. So in order to handle the emotions, you need to raise the bar, you need to strengthen the gates, the barriers of your intellect, so that it can contain the emotion. So emotion per se is a blessing. An uncontrolled emotion becomes a curse, whether be it positive, whether be it negative. You've got to understand this. And all that ruins a relationship is uncontrolled, ungoverned emotions. So you are not able to govern or control or give a conscious manifestation to your emotions. It becomes a curse. It destroys your normalcy of life. It destroys life. And when I say that, in each of your lives, there are moments where life comes to a little paralysis, isn't it? Life is paralyzed, means you come to a standstill. You're not able to think normally. Life loses its sense of normality. You're not able to get along with your relationship with near and dear. So this concept, if we are able to expand, if we are able to capitalize on the concept and work on it, if you are able to bring that sense of objectivity and detachment to your own near and dear, believe me, life becomes such a bliss. Life is a heaven. There will be lovely emotions. You'll feel joy and sorrow, yet that joy and sorrow will not affect you. Now, joy affects you, sorrow affects you, everything affects you. But tell me, is there anyone who is completely conquered that? That means if you say yes, that means you have built a very high wall of the intellect, so the water can never overflow it. So that was the concept we learned. In fact, even when you take an emotion of charity, I've seen people throughout my life where they've done extreme charity, but all the charity is because of a single emotion. They are operating on emotions. They're not operating on reason. It's a weakness. When you do charity, what should be the thought when you do charity? It is not a weakness. It means you can't see pity. What is pity? Pity is where you feel sorry for the sufferings and misfortunes of others, isn't it? But that emotion, pity, is not a strength. It's rather a weakness. It's a weak pity. So it's that act of charity also is triggered. The springboard is actually a weakness. So it doesn't come from an intellectual understanding and strength. I don't know whether you're able to relate to what I'm saying. Ushama seems to be nodding her head. I need to ask her to explain, share her wisdom a little bit.
Namaste, Guruji.
Yes, ma.
As you said, there should be somewhere a control on your emotions, and to what extent you can allow. Like, for example, this charity thing you were talking about. If you are carried away by pity and you keep on giving, then you will become bankrupt, and you may have to ask for charity from someone.
Therefore, don't give her.
No, you give, but with with a sense of control, and to what extent the other person is able to make use of your charity.
See, what do you understand when I say charity is done on emotion?
When you tend to be carried away by anybody and everybody's plea for help, unless the other person is really deserving to be helped and really he needs a genuine help, then you can go and help that person. But if he's trying to take you for a ride, and if he's trying to, not trying to stand on his feet, but he's trying to stand on your feet, then it is, he's duping you and you're being carried away by that emotion.
Okay. Now, you are absolutely right when you say, but I'm going to the extent where people do charity invariably in memory of someone, invariably in memory of their grandfather, in memory of their mother, in memory of their father. It's all an emotional attachment.
Yes.
The objective is not me serving the needy. It's all being done in the memory of.
Yes, that's true.
Now, why I'm saying this is because throughout my life, wherever I've been, wherever we have sought help and patronage, people have come forward, but they have come forward many a time on a condition that, can you put a name and say, in memory of my mother, in memory of my father? Why do you have to do that? Why can't you do charity because charity has to be done? Why do you have to tag a value to it? Why do you have to? It becomes impure. You are stuck to some emotion. You're holding on to it. You're not able to look beyond it. You're operating on mere emotion. You're not even doing charity for the sake of charity. So I'm only trying to give you a few emotions, right? And you see whether it could be a positive emotion and you're becoming emotional about it. And there's nothing good about it. I could have a negative emotion and I have a perfect control about it. There's nothing wrong about it. So what is perceived is not what the truth is. That's what I'm trying to say. It's a different aspect to it. Okay, so we covered this. So it's important. We also have to know what is our threshold. As I said, the moment you reach a threshold and your elasticity snaps, you're affected. Till then, you're able to endure it. Till then, you're able to manage. All of us have a certain threshold. So we all must strive to rise that bar, rise the threshold. Okay. All right. Let's move on. Verse 23, please. Tam vidya dukkha sanyogam viyogam yoga sangitam sanishchayena yoktavyaha yogo nirvinna chetasa. tam vidya dukkha sanyogam viyogam yoga sangitam sanishchayena yoktavyaha yogo nirvinna chetasa. A beautiful construction here. He says, let that be known as the yoga of severance from the union with pain. Dukkha, sanyoga, viyogam. The severance from the union with pain. Yoga sangitam, known as the severance from the union with pain. That yoga should be practiced with determination and with an undespairing mind. Anirvinna chetasa. Undespairing mind. It's a very unique construction. I don't think we do come across this construction very often. So the construction, as I've said here, is dukkha, sanyoga, viyogam. Severance. He used the word severance. Why is he talking of severance from pain? Sudhakar Garu, you follow the meaning to the word severance?
Cutting off.
Okay. So why does he say severance with pain?
In order to cut off the pain.
No, why does he say severance to pain?
Just like beheading somebody.
I know you have come from a land where they are intolerant, but you've come to a land where little tolerance is there. Because Sudhakar just came back from the Middle East, where there are no nonsense country. You do nonsense, you will be beheaded. Publicly, you'll be beheaded.
I have come Guruji, I have come very recently, so the influence is still there.
I know that. That's what I'm saying. Therefore, please be little lenient. We are a little lenient country. We don't behead people. We tolerate. But here he says severance from the union with pain. So what's the implication?
I really do not know.
Sir, simple, sir. Now questions only look tough, but they're not tough. Very simple question. The thing is not that you do not know. You actually answered it. You know it. What I'm saying is when they use the word severance from pain, the assumption is you already married to pain. Correct?
Yes, correct.
You are wedded
Yes.
to sorrow. Therefore,
Yes.
he's saying first apply for divorce.
Yes.
Amma, don't worry, everything is fine. No need to worry at all.
Yes.
It is all in a specific context. He is going to apply for a divorce with sorrow. And how? Through the yoga. So he calls this yoga. See, always we talk about yoga as uniting to something higher, isn't it?
But is
So
it not
very,
that, Guruji, we are unmindfully, we are living with the pain without knowing that we are living with the pain. But how to recognize that we are with the pain? Then when once we recognize, only we are able to severe it. And we are undergoing it without knowing. Practically, we are under the pain sometimes.
all of us have experienced it. Every year we used to come to India when we were based out of India. Every year we come for a month or so, and the first few days is very jarring to us. Whether be the general style of functioning, even though you're born and brought up here, but if you have stayed a little longer, and having spent past 10, 11 months continuously out of country, and when you come, there's actually a little disparity of a certain system. I'm not saying right or wrong, good or bad, whether be it a certain mannerisms, whether be it a certain driving culture or certain habits. We would find it actually a disparity. 2 weeks, 3 weeks go by, you get used to the norm. In fact, a week, 10 days, you get used to the norm. And again, when you go back to that particular land where you have to go, you'll find that a little disparity. Have you all not experienced it? So what is that why are we not able to see sorrow as sorrow? The answer to that is conditioning. We are all conditioned to a particular environment. We are conditioned to a particular thought. We are conditioned to a particular experience. We are conditioned to our life. So we don't see something wrong as wrong until you look at it from a different perspective, and you gain that perspective as you just spend a month or so overseas and you come back. Instantly you see the difference, isn't it? Everything looks, you don't see something. In fact, you start seeing something wrong with it. You start seeing imperfections glaringly because you're looking at it from a different perspective, a different yardstick. Now, exactly the same way, we are trying to look at our lives from that perspective. We are trying to take a vantage point to our lives and look at it and see what can be done with our lives. So they are looking at our lives as union with sorrow. You and I don't talk that way. When somebody asks you, how are you? You say, I'm fine, sir. You're lying. Nothing is fine. In sense, you don't know. You're not fine, really not fine. And yet there's nothing seriously wrong with you. And yet there's so much that can be corrected. Believe me, there's so much that can be done to improve life. Yet you and I don't see anything wrong with it. That is the power of acclimatization. Remember this, that's the power of acclimatization. So the only way you will be able to, how do you come out of this acclimatized state? I hope you're following, Sudhakar Garu. So I'm just trying to expand on that. How does one come out of this acclimatized state? I don't know whether you have a ready-made answer for it. The power of acclimatization. Harish ji, any thoughts? How does one come out of this acclimatization? Can't hear you. Sorry. In fact, we were just talking, Harish ji and me were talking the other day of a particular place. And the first thing I remember he was telling me was, I think one should go a day earlier to get acclimatized to that altitude. Didn't you say that, Ji? If you just walk into an altitude which you're not used to, sorry, Harish ji, I'm just trying to expand on the thought. When people who trek the Mount Everest, especially the high mountains, the Mount Everest climbing, they have the local people are known as Sherpas. Their physique and body is far more attuned to that heights and the pressures on the body. They're far more used to it than the best climbers in the world. And the Sherpas are actually carrying loads of weight for you, which you are just actually trekking, and they're carrying your food, your tents, your oxygen, your extra, everything they're carrying for you. Why? Their bodies are acclimatized to that altitude. They're born and brought up there. And I go and spend a couple of months to just scale that mountain, Mount Everest. So whether be it positive, here we're taking an example of you spend 2 months, the people spend considerable time just acclimatizing to the high altitude even before they start scaling the Mount Everest. So in a positive sense here, but we're talking in negative sense, how does one offset or counter the power of acclimatization? Harishji.
I mean, the conflict arises when one of two things happen. Either there is a great disparity between the state of your mind and the state outside. Or when you are completely identified with the outside or with the external, and therefore any change over there changes you or affects you. So in either case, there is an agitation which is caused. And acclimatization is a process of avoiding that agitation or that reaction to the difference or reaction to change. So
I don't rather understand you. See, what do you understand by acclimatization, sir?
well, to put it in a very simple kind of thing, like the positive kind of example which you gave is that in the higher altitudes, there is a lower amount of oxygen available and the body is not used to it.
I'm looking at it from a negative angle, G.
From the negative angle, when you get attached.
See, going with what Sudhakarji has said, our lives are infested with sorrow, yet I do not see sorrow as sorrow. To which we said, because of conditioning, because of acclimatization. Fair enough. Going with that point, which it all started with, clarification. Now the question is, I know I'm acclimatized to sorrow, but I don't see my life as sorrow. The question is, how do I counter this power of acclimatization, which I'm a victim of?
Only by through knowledge.
All right.
To remove the ignorance.
Through knowledge, remove the ignorance. All right. So I had to bring you back to the context of the question.
But couldn't you say, Guruji, that the very fact that you are saying that my life is full of sorrow, or my life, I am wedded to sorrow, is primarily because the origin of that sorrow is in your attitude.
It's a fact. What is attitude there? Like a person in slum is acclimatized to that stench and filth. What is attitude there? He's at that certain level. He doesn't see anything wrong with his life. Even I would go to the extent, a person who is looking at the faults of others, he wouldn't find anything to correct within. But the moment one starts turning inward and correcting, there's a lifelong job ahead of reformation within. There's so much I need to correct within. I would disregard the shortcomings of others. Wouldn't you agree with me? So when the Shastra, the term Dukkha Yoga Viyogam is a fact. They're saying the masters are looking at our lives as being wedded to sorrow. That is not an attitude, it's a fact. But what is a fact also is all of us belong to it, but what is differing in ours, we're all differing in degree, not in kind. Only a man of self-realization is of a different kind. And I am certain a person of realized status will not be spending this time with us. It's a waste of his time. So that is the only proof I have got that you have not realized. Huh? So I'm very sorry. You may be at the verge of realization, but not yet attain that moksha. Shiva. Huh? நீங்க very high level தெரியும் sir, but not realize sir. நீங்க ஒரு ஸ்டூடெண்ட்ஸ்க்காக சொல்லுங்க, எனக்கு தெரியும் between you and me in this classroom you're not realized. To your student you say, you can give ashirwad to them. I'm not saying you're doing that. How does one get out of this power of acclimatization? You said knowledge. That's a very powerful point. A few comments have come in. Let me go through them. Tinkima, very high level. Attain supreme bliss through yoga with God. And then through that practice, you come out of sorrow. Oh my God. Inama, supreme bliss we are in. When we start questioning the discomfort. Gayatrima, very good. Understand and obey the spiritual learnings. Learn from their wisdom. Getting used to her. Jama, you already got used to it. What more getting used to it? No, I can understand the pain you're going through. See, she has recently hurt herself and her shoulder is, the shoulder pain is severe because it has dislodged and she's going through physio, so the pain. So she's talking of that pain. We're not talking of that pain. We're talking of a different pain. Soumyama says getting accustomed to. There's nothing more accustomed to. You're completely a victim of it. You don't see it as pain. That's the problem. You don't see pain as pain. That's the problem. The moment you see pain as pain, the moment you see your life as imperfection, then there's a scope of perfection, isn't it? Do you see your life as imperfection? Do you see something glaringly wrong with your attitude? Right now I'm talking. I'm not talking of what in the past. I'm not talking of your future. If I freeze this moment now, Reddy Garu, if I freeze your thinking, if I freeze your optimum capacity, what you are reaching and operating now, and I say you examine this, do you see anything imperfect in it?
No, Guruji.
That is acclimatization. This precisely is acclimatization. You don't see anything wrong with your attitude, with my life, with my surroundings, with my situation. I don't see anything wrong with it.
Right.
This is the power of acclimatization. It is so, if you look at it, there should be a certain bhayam. Oh my God. It's like I'm having a terminal disease right now. I do not know that I have a terminal disease. I'm saying I'm fine. You know, that's one of the reasons why people don't go through blood test, or they don't go through complete body checkup. You know, they say if unnecessarily something will come up, I rather live with it than knowing and suffering. And again, they'll only start giving me pills, and that treatment is better not to do any test. I've heard this many a time. Recently also I was informed of this, but I've heard this story. Ignorance is bliss. I rather not know than knowing it. Bhayam vastunda sir, Reddy garu?
No, not at all.
Ayyo.
Not at all.
I thought you will say yes.
No. So definitely it's the opposite of the ignorance of bliss, because the clarity is the power. So other way of putting across that. So being knowing exactly what's going wrong. Yeah. So we're more powerful to deal with the issues rather than running away, skulking away from the issues which are trying to not to come.
No, we're not talking of escapism here. We are only talking about
ignorance.
Coming back to that.
Yeah,
no.
I'm sorry, Guruji. What I'm trying to say that with the fear, with the context like where we are saying, with the fear of that, when we test it, we come to know quite a lot of issues within our system on the body. We avoid it. That is the avoiding is nothing but the fear factor. So the fear factor has to overcome is the one where we need to be prepared for the consequences. At least you come across testing at this moment, you may get an opportunity to cure it rather than getting delayed and it goes out of control. Correct. So we need to overcome the fear.
Indeed, indeed. But I was just going with the earlier, I asked you of that experience of the power of acclimatization, where I don't see anything wrong with me.
Right.
I'm afraid of that, sir.
Hmm.
I'm talking of that state.
Okay, I got the point.
You know, that condition, in fact, that state of acclimatization is nothing but tamasic state, in a familiar terms. It's a state of tamas, a state of no action. All right. Before I take to a few more comments, which I want to read, couple of them have raised their hands. Just a minute. Someone, Jayashri 123456, wants to say something.
Acclimatization
Can I
be...
see you, please? Is it possible for you to activate your video? Namaskar.
Namaskar. Acclimatization, I think, can be overcome by making yourself vulnerable to the situations where you have the fear of getting more acclimatized. Or you know, when you realize that you are acclimatized, then you need to become more vulnerable to more, giving yourself that freedom to explore. That's what I'm thinking about.
Can I request you to repeat that point, Ma? I just wanted to make an understanding again. I sort of don't get you.
Like becoming vulnerable. When we are talking about acclimatization, we get acclimatized to say a set of life, like, okay, this is what I need and I have this, and this is what I'm so used to. That people respect me and I give respect and I get respect, and I am what I am.
All right.
So then what happens? You become staunch about it, and then that's what I believe is acclimatization. So there is no scope for any improvement. But at that point, if you let yourself more vulnerable to explore.
My whole concern to what you're saying is the term vulnerable. Why are you talking of being more vulnerable?
Vulnerable means getting exposure to what more could be there. So that's the kind of vulnerability. That's the kind of vulnerability, because when we say acclimatization, opposite becomes vulnerability, is what I was.
I don't know whether
I was trying to derive.
In fact, I can get your concept. I understand where you're getting at, but I don't know whether vulnerability is the opposite of acclimatization. You know, perhaps you're broadening your horizon. You're looking for different dimensions. You're trying to expand your understanding, as people have said, gain more wisdom, gain knowledge, gather more experience, so that it broadens your ability to look at life differently, so that you are able to recast your own life from a different perspective.
That doesn't happen because you already acclimatized. That's what I'm trying to derive at. Because once you acclimatized, you are at a safe place. And from that safe place, if you have to move, you have to have a sort of letting go of that safeness. So that's what that vulnerability is. Okay, let me,
I think we are talking the same thing. It's just that you are using a different expression.
Okay.
I think I agree with you.
Okay.
Just going back to the example which I've said, if a person who is acclimatized to a life of that filth and stench in a slum, the only way he will see his life is by bringing him out of that and exposing him to hygiene and health and cleanliness. So he starts understanding, oh, it is possible for someone to live a life of this standard. Then he looks at his life and his condition he is in as imperfect. We couldn't call that vulnerable. You're just trying to broaden your horizon. You're trying to gather more wisdom or knowledge. I think, but that apart from that word, I think I agree with you what you were saying. All right, just moving on. Yes, Sitaramji.
If I may quickly at slightly grosser level, there's enough body of research now available which says that eating animal proteins is not good for your health. But those who have been born in the Western society and even in India, where right from childhood you are eating only animal proteins during your meals, it's extremely difficult for them to accept this reality which the science is bringing. Now, this is what I would say is a acclimatization or sort of habituated to a particular way of living, where you know for a fact, I mean, now you know for a fact through knowledge that this is eating these kind of things is harmful for your body, yet there is this, let's say, reluctance or inability to change those habits. So this acclimatization is so deeply rooted that it is impossible, almost impossible to make a change. That's what
I would request you to please consider removing the word impossible.
Oh yeah. Well, actually, you're right. It is not impossible. It can be done.
Thank you very much. That's all I'll say. If you say impossible, then we'll have to change the topic and move on. Nothing can be done about it, is it?
Then we are lost.
Then we are lost. We are all slaves then. I don't think.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
Yeah, it's very difficult. Yes. Vaidyanathan ji.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Now, when you're acclimatized, that means you're accepted, you're comfortable, and you're not questioning. If you have a goal in life, and in our case, at this stage, let's say we're all seeking self-realization or progressing towards that. Until we reach that, we cannot get acclimatized with it because you have not achieved our objective, and we will have to be questioning everything, our surrounding, what we are doing, everything, until we are reaching our goal or making progress towards that. So to break out of that acclimatization, we have to bring our goal inside all the time and say, am I making progress? Am I in the right direction? Is today better than yesterday? Am I better off? So when you keep questioning yourself, you keep disturbing the acclimatized, stable state, and then you start moving forward and never get complacent with your environment and say, I'm okay, I'm happy here. But you keep pursuing more by not accepting status quo.
You got a beautiful point. You made a wonderful point. Yeah. Yes. Couldn't differ with you, sir. Beautiful point. Yes. Sudhakar Garu. Just a minute, sir. Could you?
Yeah.
Yes.
In a very simple manner and very simple terms, can we classify the acclimatization to the term, I am perfect with my imperfections? I remember that old statement, sometimes many people try to pinpoint my imperfections, even though I am not that much imperfect. But acclimatization will be, I would say, classified. Suppose if I fail, I am perfect with my imperfections and try to console myself that I am perfect.
that is almost justifying. I don't think that would help you to come out of acclimatization.
No, many of the times, in many places, and I have read and have seen Guruji's talking, always telling us, you simply feel that you are perfect with your imperfections. Never go around with anybody or anything like that.
I don't know in what context that statement is said. I wouldn't rather only I would be careful using in this context, I'm saying, okay. But that statement by alone may have a standing, but not in the context. That's the perception I have,
It is not relevant to the context. That is
not relevant to the context.
I thought we can feel that way, in spite of our imperfections. I am perfect, and that is that can be treated as acclimatization. That is what I felt, but now I understand.
Please, right, okay, right, sir. Hariji.
I remember myself, one of my senior colleagues, when we were working in Muscat, he came from Bombay and in a crowded place. And when he came to Muscat, he had a beautiful house, but very calm and quiet. The third day, he submitted his resignation, telling that he can't take up this silence. It was so, the entire atmosphere was so silent and calm. He was so used to the Bombay hubbub and the noise. And it took time for us to convince him and to stay back and withdraw his resignation. Very highly paid employee. He submitted his paper. So it says that it is too silent. He was so acclimatized staying in a crowded place with the noise.
A beautiful observation, a beautiful example. Yeah, that's nice.
He submitted, in third day, he submitted his paper. Educated man. He was not able, and then it took time for us to talk. Even the MD himself had to come, and then slowly, now he loves it.
Now he's acclimatized to silence. Now he can't go back to Bombay, his hometown. Now then somebody else has to come and counsel him and say, please, you got to.
Now he has gone to Singapore. He left Muscat. I remember it very vividly.
It's a nice example in the context. All right. Moving on. Tinkima, I saw you wanted to say something. I'm sorry, I missed you.
Query.
Amma?
Yeah, I just had a query, Guruji. You said, see life as an imperfection, and so that you can change it to one of perfection. Now, life is imperfect in varying degrees for different people. And I think most of us, to some extent, do try to make the changes we can. And sometimes we're not able to make those changes because the things outside, external things are not, life is not always in our control. So in such a situation, when I know some things, I will change the things I can. I will have to accept the things I cannot change. And I need the wisdom to know the difference. I think this is a very well-known thing of Serenity Foundation also. So in this, I will change what I can. Then I need to accept what I can't change, even though it is imperfect. It may cause pain, but I should not get affected by the pain. Then what is the role of karma in this? Because there may be something that I need to go through. Some experiences, some pain, some sorrow, some loss, I don't know. So I don't think there's any person in this life, in this world whose life is perfect. So what is the role of karma then in this? And then can we not, instead of, then if we can at that point, I don't know how many of us really can, but theoretically we think, instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Why is it not changing? Why is it not getting better? Perhaps we need to ask, what is it trying to teach me? What is the lesson I need to learn? What is the pain that I have given to someone that I am needing to go through it, to experience it, to know what this pain is? So can that not be a form of higher learning? So here, acclimatization, not in the sense of one is, being given an injection and you don't know what's happening, unaware. You're just going on like a zombie. Being aware, taking action.
One request to you, whenever you ask a question, don't explain the question.
Okay.
Because I am lost. And I think most of them are lost, not knowing what you're asking. You should phrase, no. Phrase your question. I request you, if you could just phrase it in 1 or 2 lines. If there is clarity in the question, in fact, I would have asked you to repeat the question because I'm lost. In the process of explaining, I've actually lost my track. I'm not saying you're not clear. And if I can request you to just hold on for a while, because it's likely, because you're bringing in another element of karma, action, other things into it. Okay. Can I come back to this question, please?
Yes, sure.
Meanwhile, can I request you if you can jot down what exactly you're asking?
Yeah, I did actually. I noted it down so that I would stay on track according to me, but maybe it's too long a question.
Yeah, so it's not just for you, it's for everybody. In fact, when you're asking, try to be very succinct. Don't explain the question until explanation is sought. Then it becomes easier for everybody to follow. That's my suggestion, ma. But I'll just come back because I just wanted to go through the few comments. I think just to carry on with the earlier concept we're discussing of the power of acclimatization. So Reddy Garu had commented, through wisdom, we would perhaps counter the ever influence of acclimatization. You have a point. Become a witness by looking at the situation objectively. So both the comments by Jayama and Padminima, I think they have a very valid point where you start looking at life from a different perspective. Ramji is saying acclimatization in terms of emotions is like a comfort zone. We all stay in our zones in which we are acclimatized. To come out of it or not by getting attached to it, or to use our intellect to analyze and keep yourself away from getting into comfort zones. Can you please clarify what this is, Ramji?
Namaskar, Guruji.
Yes, sir.
This was in the context of our discussion that the shloka says that you have to sever yourself from the union with pain. So,
correct.
How to get out of pain? Because we all live with pain, and we all accept it and then create our own mini climate, what we call as microclimates around us, within which we live comfortably. Because if you can't live comfortably, then you will get addicted to something to overcome pain, or you will go off track. So I think if you have to detach yourself from pain, as what it says, sever yourself from the pain, then you have to practice it by using your intellect and recognizing the pain points, and then how do you use your intellect to stay away or detach yourself from those pain points. I think that's what I was suggesting as a solution to that issue.
But how would the intellect sever from pain?
Intellect will help you to analyze the pain points, from where you are getting each of those pain points, and then it should help you to find solutions to each of those things to overcome that. and then find a way of solving those issues. They could be emotional, they could be physical, they could be related to anything. Yeah.
But if you followed, I'm sure you have been following that line of thought, the power of acclimatization, what it does is you don't see pain as pain. You don't see imperfection as imperfection. You don't see sorrow as sorrow. Then if that be so, how would intellect help you to solve the points or triggering points of the sorrow?
But I think that is where, I mean, at least my understanding is that that's where intellect actually has to come into play, because it is, you're accepting the pain is more at the level of the mind, and it is at a level where you are actually not thinking about it. You are accepting, sir, and then just living with it.
Can I not say, as Ram, are you not acclimatized to your thinking?
Yes, because that is the way all of us live. I mean, I also live like that.
I am acclimatized to my thinking, not just my emotions and my physicality and my environment and situations, but I'm even acclimatized to my thinking. So how would I checkmate my own thinking?
So
if it's the intellect, if intellect is that needs to, but the intellect itself is acclimatized.
But that's where I think the intellect has to gain knowledge and gain the inputs which will help it to analyze these situations. That's what I feel, because there's nothing beyond that you can really do. But I think all the inputs that come through your experiences, interactions, and then your sadhanas and all that, and then use them to analyze with your intellect. That's what I mean. I may be wrong, but that's what I.
No. I'm not. I'm not saying at all that you're wrong, but I'm only trying to take it a step further as you say this, that even intellect at times is a slave. It's helpless, because if somebody were to challenge your thinking, instantly we resist, don't we?
Yeah, that is the first.
We justify,
response.
we resist. Yeah. So right. That's the power of acclimatization. We think we are right. I would never ever suspect that I could be fundamentally wrong in my approach to life. That's the problem. I don't see there's a wrong in because of the fact that I have been exposed to a certain education or a certain thought pattern and certain factors. I believe this is the right way. So we are actually questioning the very edifice of everything that we are doing here. So I could be thinking, and my thinking could be perverted. That's very much a possibility. And the only way, in fact, in other words, you have actually said, which everybody has said, is you have to surrender to a factor which is beyond yourself and allow that factor to influence you. See, until you surrender, surrendering is actually opening your doors and welcoming the wisdom of the masters into your life. Surrender. It is not just lending your ears. Now you're all lending your ears. Hats off to you for that. But how many of you have actually surrendered to this knowledge? They're two different things, please. Surrendering is you put aside your understanding and you allow their wisdom to come and actually influence your thinking, influence your life. And that will certainly uproot the deep-rooted impressions, which is what we call as the power of acclimatization. And we start looking at life from a totally different perspective. And that term is known as, in Bhagavad we are learning. How many of you can recall that Sanskrit term we have used? The concept in Bhagavad Padmanima. I know it's there.
Pratipaksha Bhavana?
Correct. The Pratipaksha Bhavana. What is Pratipaksha Bhavana? Is to look at things from a different perspective. He looks at life from a different perspective. He looks at everything from a different perspective, and the perspective is the perspective of the men of wisdom. So we are trying to gain their perception, to look at our life from their perception. And how do you practice it? The only way you practice it is through upasana. Upa-asana. Upa is near, asana is to sit. Upasana is to sit near a teacher with the objective of gaining the perception of the guru. It's symbolic, not literally. Swamiji was telling in one of the lectures, a lady had come to his place to seek some personal clarification. She had known Swamiji and she had come to the ashram and said, Swamiji, I want some personal clarification. Can I seek? He said, yeah, please come to the conference room. We'll sit and talk one-to-one. She came and she sat. Every 2 minutes, she was coming closer and closer to him. And Swamiji who was talking, he was in his own, so engrossed in the conversation, he did not mind that. Until it became too uncomfortable, she was coming very close to him. Then she said, Amma, what are you doing? No, Swamiji, I'm trying to practice upasana. You only said you must come near to the Guru to gain the perception of the Guru. That doesn't mean you go and sit in the lap of the Guru. Huh? So don't take it literally. It's not a physical practice. It is the mental attitude where you try to shed your ego. You've got to shed your ego of the knowing and believing something. Shed that, and if you are able to surrender, you allow the wisdom, as Rajima says, listen to the masters. So I think you all have beautifully sailed through the concept, but see, the role I'm only playing is just moderating. I love to play this kind of a role where we are able to juggle with all that we have, so that we are able to make it holistic and look at, in fact, the same thing. It's so interesting, the same verse, what we have discussed vis-a-vis what I had to convey is a totally different perspective, because we have actually got a different perception. Each one has brought their beautiful idea. Like I just scribbled some points when Ramji was mentioning, he talked about everybody wants to create a micro or a mini climate for themselves. You see, it's a beautiful, each is an idea. So you're looking at a different way of trying to relook at the same thing. Otherwise it becomes very stale. Huh? Okay. Oh my God, there's a ton of comments here. Okay, Gayatri Ma is asking, what is the difference between adjusting and acclimatization? Is that what the question is?
Guru, yes. Actually, it was when I put the question, Hariji already asked that, when the person moves from one place to the other, he gets used to that place and he'd not like to come back to the other place. So he is literally adjusting himself to the situation, whatever it is. So is it not that acclimatization for the benefit?
You asking Hariji or asking me?
Asking you. In that context of transfers only, I got this question in my mind. When somebody gets transferred, they get acclimatized to the new surroundings, new things, everything. So is it not positive that he gets used to it? Is it called adjusting, or is it called acclimatization for the better?
Is it not? Sorry?
Is it not that he is a very good adjusting himself, or can we say that he is acclimatizing himself for the betterment? Is it positive or a negative then? He is getting used to things.
See, I don't know. We don't want to be just playing with words, but what we all should learn is to adapt to different situations. And if you're not able to adapt, I think acclimatization is that which works against. If you're going with the example with Hariji had given, are you going with the example Hariji had given?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
yeah. So going with his example, he was so conditioned to a particular environment with sound and people and hush-bush and all that intense activity. When you go to an environment where things are mellowed down, it's so pristine, it is so conducive, it's so calm, you're not able to adapt to that situation. So that is still a drawback, I would say. You know, I would look at it that way. Okay.
Okay.
Right. I think I will have to, anything which I'm missing here. Soumya, am I asking acclimatization means getting immune to? Immune, I don't know, it's not immune to. Can we say immune to? Is it right? Hariji, can we say acclimatization is being immune to?
I think a better way of saying it would be getting comfortable with that rather than immune.
Yeah, you're just very comfortable. Yeah, very much. Right. Just a minute, we have crossed our allotted time, but if you spare a few minutes, I can just quickly go back to Tinkima. If you can read out a question, what we wanted to ask, I'll clarify that, and then perhaps we'll conclude and we'll come back to this verse if required next week. Yes, ma.
Guruji, you mentioned that life, we need to see the imperfection of life to change it to perfection. But everything in life is not in our control. Then what?
We are not talking about things which you have no control. When you say life is imperfect, we are talking about looking imperfection within. See, the moment we look at our lives, just if you're able to visualize what was your life before you had exposure to this wisdom, before you had an access to this knowledge, or look at lives of people who don't have access to this knowledge or wisdom, how rigid they become, how stiff they become, how they don't see where their life is heading. They don't see their own shortcomings. So it's not the question of trying to be perfect. There's nothing as perfect, because perfection is self-realization. It's a long way to go. So the whole approach to life is whether you are conscious of your imperfections. Capture these words, please. It is to be conscious at every moment of your imperfections, because there's nothing as a perfect state. Now, I am not a perfect state. So when the more the knowledge I gain, the more I contemplate and introspect, it is bringing areas of my imperfections. You will have to accept and endure things which you can't change, which you may be complaining about now. You're sitting and complaining about certain things. It's possible. I'm not saying it's happening. It's possible you're complaining. You will start realizing, no, why am I complaining about that person? That is that person's nature. Let me accept it and deal with it. Rather than saying, why are you doing this? Why not do that? You can complain, don't you? So you start looking at hidden imperfections, they start revealing to you. And that's how you start getting over the power of acclimatization. I do not know how much it fascinated you all. Yes, ma, but it's a fascinating subject for discussion and for your own self-introspection. It fascinates me. It's something very, very important. So that
imperfection within change the entire complexion of the whole statement.
Sorry, could you come again, ma? Sorry.
We like the statement life, see life as imperfection to change it to one of perfection. So that word within, imperfection within, has completely given a different and a completely new meaning.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Most welcome. I'm glad. Okay, we'll come back. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purna Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.